What does Mobutu Sese Seko Kuku Ngbendu Za Banga mean? A storytelling exploration of power, identity, marriage, and tradition. Part 1. The Making of a Name. The Congo River cut its eternal path across the heart of Africa, carrying with it stories of kingdoms, colonizers, and conquerors. In that vast land, a boy named Joseph was born in 1930 in Lisola, a sleepy riverside town of what was then the Belgian Congo. Few could have imagined that this child would grow into one of the most powerful and most controversial leaders of the 20th century. He would later crown himself with a name so long, so commanding, and so unusual that it became almost legendary. Mobutu Sese Seko Kuku Ngbendu Za Banga. To Western ears, this sounded like a riddle, a mouthful of syllables impossible to fully grasp. But to Mobutu himself, to the Congolese, and to those who understood the weight of names in African tradition, it was a declaration of destiny. The power of a name in African tradition. In African societies, a name is never just a label. It carries the spirit of ancestry, the expectations of community, and the hopes of parents. In the Congo, names could invoke courage, honor, beauty, or even defiance. When Mobutu abandoned his baptismal name, Joseph-Désiré, and rechristened himself Mobutu Sese Seko Kuku Ngbendu Za Banga, he was doing far more than rejecting European life. He was proclaiming himself as a mythic figure, a leader beyond the ordinary. The name translates roughly to the all-powerful warrior, who, because of his endurance and inflexible will to win, goes from conquest to conquest, leaving fire in his wake. Every part of the name was carefully chosen. Mobutu, his family name, tying him to his father's lineage. Sese Seko, the one who never tires, symbol of endurance. Kuku Ngbendu, the rooster that goes from hen to hen, a boast of virility and dominance. Za Banga, leaving fire in his wake, a warning to enemies and a promise of destruction for challengers. This was not modesty. This was not humility. This was the construction of a cult of personality. Part 2. A name as political weapon. The 1960s were turbulent for the Congo. Independence from Belgium in June 1960 brought not peace but chaos. Patrice Lumumba, the fiery nationalist prime minister, was assassinated in 1961, leaving the nation adrift. Civil wars raged, regions seceded, and foreign powers meddled. It was in this chaos that Mobutu, once a young soldier in the Belgian colonial army and later a journalist, rose to prominence. He staged a coup in 1965, seizing power and promising to bring unity to the fractured country. But Mobutu was not satisfied with being just another president. He wanted to be a symbol. Thus began his campaign of authenticité, a cultural revolution that demanded Congolese people abandon their European names and adopt African ones. Cities were renamed, clothing styles changed, and French suits gave way to the abacoste, a Mao-inspired tunic Mobutu promoted as the national dress. And at the center of it all stood his own name, Mobutu Sese Seko Kuku Ngbendu Za Banga. Every time it was spoken, it reinforced his myth. His name was meant to intimidate, to inspire awe, and to remind people that he was not just a man, but a force of nature. The rooster that went from hen to hen. The most controversial part of Mobutu's name was Kuku Ngbendu, which translates to the rooster who goes from hen to hen. This was no accident. Mobutu wanted to project himself as virile, unstoppable, a man of boundless energy, not just on the battlefield but in the bedroom. And indeed, Mobutu lived up to this boast. He was notorious for his polygamy, his countless affairs, and his unrestrained desire for women. His palace life was filled with banquets, leopard skin hats, luxury goods, and women who admired, or were compelled to admire, his power. But one marriage in particular stands out as both shocking and telling about Mobutu's worldview: his marriage to his uncle's wife. Marriage to his uncle's wife. In many African traditions, marriage carries layers of social responsibility, kinship, and taboo. Marrying within extended family was sometimes practiced to keep wealth and alliances intact. Yet there were boundaries, and one of them was the idea of marrying the wife of an elder relative. Mobutu, however, crossed this line. After his uncle died, he married his uncle's widow, an act that scandalized some, yet others accepted it as a consolidation of power and continuity within the family. To Mobutu, it was not a matter of morality but of dominance. He wanted what he wanted, and he took it. This marriage symbolized Mobutu's attitude toward tradition. He would bend it, reinterpret it, or break it entirely if it suited his vision of himself as a man above all others. The taboo of twins. Another fascinating and darker aspect of Mobutu's life involves the issue of twins. In many Central African traditions, twins were once considered both a blessing and a curse. Some communities saw them as symbols of abundance, while others viewed them with suspicion, believing they carried spiritual danger. Mobutu, despite his modern suits and his jet-set lifestyle, was deeply superstitious. His relationship with the idea of twins was complicated. According to whispers around Kinshasa and Gabadalite, his home village, which he transformed into a personal Versailles, Mobutu feared the birth of twins within his household. He believed it was an omen, a challenge to his singular authority. Some stories suggest he took drastic measures to ensure that twins would never disrupt his dynasty, though such accounts remain rumor. What is clear is that Mobutu's obsession with control extended even into the most intimate spaces of family and birth. Part 3. The Cult of Personality. By the 1970s, Mobutu had perfected the art of self-glorification. His face was on every banknote, his portrait in every office, his name on every lip. State television broadcast endless footage of him descending from planes, greeting crowds, or presiding over ceremonies in his trademark leopard skin hat. His long name became a ritual chant. School children memorized it, party members repeated it, and foreign diplomats stumbled over it. To say his name was to acknowledge his dominance. To shorten it was almost an insult. For some, he was the strong man who kept the vast, chaotic Congo from tearing itself apart. For others, he was a thief who plundered the nation's riches while building golden palaces for himself. But whether one loved him or hated him, no one could ignore the power of his name. Mobutu Sese Seko Kuku Ngbendu was Za Banga. The fire he left in his wake. The last part of his name, Za Banga, carried a warning, leaving fire in his wake. And indeed, wherever Mobutu went, he left behind both fear and fascination. He crushed dissent ruthlessly. Rivals were exiled, silenced, or eliminated, yet he also cultivated a charisma that made him magnetic. During the Cold War, Western leaders courted him, seeing in him a bulwark against communism. In return, Mobutu enriched himself with billions siphoned from the country's mineral wealth. But the fire also consumed his people. While Mobutu lived in opulence, flying to Paris for shopping sprees and entertaining guests in Badalite's lavish palace, ordinary Congolese citizens struggled with poverty, corruption, and collapsing infrastructure. The fire was both literal, as wars tore through parts of the country, and symbolic, as he burned through the nation's wealth. Part 4. Contradictions of a Name. By the end of the 1970s, Mobutu was not just a president, he was a myth. His name promised eternal strength, virility, and domination. Yet behind it lay contradictions. The leader who preached authenticity, yet wore Western luxury and relied on French tailors. The man who celebrated tradition, yet broke taboos by marrying his uncle's wife. The ruler who feared twins, yet projected himself as immortal. The warrior who claimed inflexible will to win, yet fled into exile in 1997 when rebels marched on Kinshasa. His name was both his armor and his trap, a performance he could never fully live up to. Conclusion. So what does Mobutu Sese Seko Kuku Ngbendu Za Banga mean? It means more than just the all-powerful warrior who never tires, goes from conquest to conquest, leaving fire in his wake. It means the deliberate crafting of a myth. It means the merging of tradition, masculinity, and politics into a single, unforgettable persona. It means the story of a man who ruled not only with soldiers and wealth, but with words, symbols, and the power of a name. In the end, Mobutu's name outlasted his reign. His dictatorship crumbled, his palaces turned to ruins, and his people remembered the suffering he caused. Yet his name, long, strange, magnificent, and terrifying, still echoes in the history of Africa. Mobutu understood one timeless truth. To rule is not just to command, but to be remembered.